Hello, everyone. The title of today's episode is Teachings on Existential Peace. And so Mr.Within would be diving into the concept of peace and to see how different human beings are engaging it and simply how the nature of it is. What that means is if we look around and we see people, how could this world turn peaceful? I mean, what is the possibility? Do you know? What are the different ways and methods where, based on one efficient move, the world can get much more able? Do you know? It's like once you have reached your individual ability, you begin to see, all right, I want the whole world to have this now. You know? Just like how it is with knowledge, there's an elegance. So I'm going to begin with the actuality of what existence is self-reflectively, and in a sense how peace is found within it, within existence. In other words, how do you find peace within this existence? When you begin considering how you are here, you begin to see that there is a certain relationship there in regards to thought. And so how the human being is self-aware is suggesting how he's perceiving a world which is him. What that means is if you feel bad, it's perhaps because the world around you seems bad to you. Do you know? And so when you begin to see why the world seems bad to you, rather than just accepting a certain range of beliefs and not exploring greater aspects of this existential life intelligence that you are, you begin to see it's like once you allow yourself to stop doing what you've always been doing, you give yourself a minute to see, gosh, I could do something else. And so this simple awareness begins, if not mindfully taken into view, it will lead into a lot of collisions of elusive senses of self, where you begin to look at life and it's as if that moment where it doesn't matter those people on the television screen are killing people in front of you in regards to that movie, because it's just an image. Do you see? It's as if, like, because we are not taking it seriously on some level, there is the illusion. And also, because we're not taking it seriously, we see that the only way we can approach it is through an existential clarity that is beyond the ideas that are not giving the whole truth. So what that means is all ideology and words and any signs and any person's voice can be for you is just a very unique object in which you, through your observance, it can have meaning. When you begin to see that person you didn't like, you were just one person who didn't like him. Some people might have really liked that guy. You cannot remain in that state of thought, because your vision is not just in one man, it is selflessly becoming aware of how every being is having a sense of self. And so what happens when you see a child that's beginning to say things and to begin to think? You need to make that child think more so he becomes aware of what kind of world he's in, you know? And think of it this way. You are a football player and you see there's this young kid who's really loved football and he's been cheering in the crowd, but he doesn't know how to play. So you want to say, all right, kid, come into the field. And when the kid comes into the field, it's as if he never knew how much room he had to play around, how much he could have just kicked the ball rather than watching it on the screen. And suddenly there's that moment where you see you had so much more existential allowance than you thought you did. Existential allowance means perception is always changing, and still don't think you're lost in a certain perception. Don't think that you are lost because of your design. Rather think of it, you are aware of your design, and so you can never be lost, because you can in an instant have the intention of the found. You must become serious with life to then see why you need to be playful here. And this seriousness is in self-awareness, because many people are thinking, when they are talking about success, they're thinking for the success of the human being. you know, for the human form, but they are not thinking about the success of the actual experiencer. And so the experiences has unknown portions. That's why we have such beautiful philosophy, poetry, and space for science to grow. Because there's a huge unknown factor, and it's as if this whole life, the minute you look out, you see the beauty of science was that there was a missing variable. That perhaps Isaac Newton knew the edges of what he did not know, and then he found out that knowing was his newest interpretation. And so regardless of how thought begins to move, whether we are adding imagery of, let's say, of a scientific manner, or imagery of a religious manner, or imagery of a spiritual manner, or imagery of a whatever manner, we must become aware that we are more than thoughts. And so if you're judging your fellow man, you are creating a random world with your communication and making that real for that guy. Many people are right now, the way they're communicating, they are bringing wrath onto others by trying to make themselves a stable position. Survival of the fittest does not mean you must become ignorant of existential awareness. You must see that just like how you seek a freedom where you have room to do anything, every being that you equate to that same value must have that same freedom. Compassion is where you begin to see rationality meant trust what you are. And as you trust, then rationality even works better, but you also begin to acknowledge and perceive the nonlinear aspects in the fact that poetry had two sources of occurring. In a sense, one, by acknowledging what was old and seeing it in a new way, and two, by running into the forest and seeing something that you can never tell man, and you never need to, and it's a vision of great proportion, in the sense that a mountain lion has roared in front of your face, and you're beginning to see that you were never a man, but the life force that gave that mountain lion its roar. And so when you walk, the lion respects you, the mountain lion respects you in the sense of your presence, because you know existentially what you are, compared to a person who goes there and thinks, oh, this is an animal, I'm going to kill it, I'm going to survive, I'm going to run away. Do you see? Your presence is how much you are keeping reality here. And to be serious with yourself in that manner is where peace begins, because peace no longer becomes based on a character's movement in a story. Because when there is a character in a story, there is the unknown intelligence of the storyteller, and so the character all the time is like, dear God, what's happening with the story? Is it going to end? But no, it's just that the character must begin to see that the experience that is observing the object of experience, that is the character. In other words, the life within man is the life within everything else that man is seeing. And fundamentally, you need to see that once you get rid of the ignorance of all that self-talk and conviction, which was based on just ideas that were real to you just because how they were communicated, you will begin to see that the value of your truth is within your moment of experience. And so there have been many poets which have just burst into this understanding. And in a sense, guys, it's all about how you begin to see that your intelligence, your existential intelligence, and what you are as a being does not constantly need to be oriented by thoughts that are found within a space-time consideration. Because if you do that too much, it'll be that moment where you've read a story in a novel to a point where you're like, God, I love this character, I am this character. And you're getting lost into imagery. Man must always be mindful of imagery, just like you're mindful of perhaps a rock, when you're walking, so you don't step on it and just hurt the bottom of your feet for no reason in the middle of the day. So you need to be aware, So, guys, as one's awareness moves to the intelligence of their moment, they find this humility where they're no longer asking questions because they want to, for themselves, observe what they are first. It's as if you realize, all right, there's no homework, there's no obligation, there's nothing externally, because I want to observe the nature of how I'm seeing my world to be external. And once you observe it, you find yourself in a moment of deep self-contemplation, which is very clear and empty, because it's as if you're observing thoughts rather than thinking, in a sense, in quotations. So once you go into that moment of deep self-contemplation, that moment of silence and stillness within your being, where you're just life, where you're just like life, you're just here, you begin to see that ideology does not need to be received by you. I mean, your world might ask you obligations. Your world might come here and tell you, hey man, you need to do this and you have this job tomorrow and you got to do this. And you might have that kind of existential responsibility, but you'll see you are still receiving how communication is entering your ears. So what that means is you are that intelligence that is observing manifestation rather than thinking it's just an objective body. You're not more a body that has a mind, because if you seek through that framework, there's a dead end in which literally there needs to be the death of that idea for clarity to continue. So what you need to see is that you need to observe the self in which all senses of other is coming from. And you need to see, if you try to be selfless, and not a selfless where someone, it's not mainly idea-based, it's that selflessness where you find in the compassion of a being to just give something to someone. Just like that moment where that person had an answer to a problem and he just gave it. Do you know? Because there's no reason not to give. And there's also no reason to take either. But we begin to see that when we human beings are becoming aware of the nature of human communication, literally we are observing human communication together, not just humor comes into one's awareness, but there comes that existential clarity where the field was never on fire. I would like to share a quote with you guys about this existential search for a sense of existential peace. And the quote is by a very realized Sufi mystic named Rumi, from I believe 800 years ago in what I believe was ancient Persia or somewhere in the Middle East. Anyways, at that time, guys, let us not just think that we know how it was then. Let us just simply begin by visualizing that if you were a human being born there, without any comparison to future, as if we're looking at the history of man without a consideration of our present and future, but we're being present in that idea. So you, in a sense, what I'm saying is, imagine you're born suddenly and you are this kid who you are in, let's say, 1,000 years ago in that ancient Persian culture, or wherever that culture was, what kind of culture it was. You begin to see in that culture, there was this man who reached a point in his life journey where he asked this question, and I could see that it's as if this was a very aware being, because he was directly going to see the nature of consciousness. He was not waiting for beliefs or theories or ideology or imagery to give it a chance. He was directly going for it as a mystic, you know. And so he has this quote where he says, I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. Just think of this human being, guys. He's lived on the lip, on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door, as if like, why am I here in life? He says then, it opens. I've been knocking from the inside. And what this suggests, the profundity in this being's self-awareness, is as profound as what happened with the Buddha. It is actually the same experience in human consciousness. As if him and the Buddha were around, they'd really get along. Rumi and Buddha. Such poetry could be made from such a man. Anyways, I would like to say the quote just on its own also. I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside. What Mr.Within finds, this quote suggests, for human understanding, is a very absolute path and suggestion of a view in the human experience towards an existential peace for this being. So, in other words, what I find Rumi was perhaps experiencing that moment is a problem that many beings right now in our current society are experiencing, you know? So Rumi he came to the party too early and he saw nobody was there, but he still danced along and he's like, yeah, I'm still going to dance, and he was an explosion. Everybody knew that was a good party because there was someone there. And so now we begin to see when man's consciousness reaches a point where it's questioning, or not in a sense questioning, I don't want to use that term, but I want to say observing and in a mystical and very compassionate way, loving to see what the unknown really means for one's knowledge. You begin to see that there is a self-reflective quality to this nature that just like how you read a book or how you're hearing my talk and how you're getting a certain impression of it, you are receiving that. You are extracting meaning from the phenomena that is in your moment. And so when you become aware that you are just alive, that beyond your imagery, beyond your ideology, beyond your distinction, even before that moment when there could be a spark between a duality in regards to a male, feminine, a man and woman, there was that moment where there was the inspiration of man and woman, which was an intelligence beyond interpretation. It was that moment where there was an intelligence beyond the projected world. So it has nothing to do with who you are, but rather how you are seeing this you in this universe. And so if we put our trust in letters, we'll see that there could be infinite amount of words. So we must put our trust in the interpreter that is giving meaning to the most immediate duality. And so in a sense, you will begin to see that when the door opens, you were knocking from the inside. You were the being who stepped into that room and suddenly interpreted how much you wanted to see if it was full or not, and then realized you have the ability to step out. So in other words, you are beyond your projection, know yourself as such, and walk in a way where you are not telling reality what to do, but you are seeing in how you are aware of your being, all action is being done. For existential peace then becomes the quality of the openness of your communication, which is your directest experience. And regardless of how much man can extract poetry out of the unknown, you will begin to see that what is beyond the unknown, so in other words, what is beyond a version of you that knows and a version of you that doesn't know, is the version that is that is observing them, that is aware of them. And it is beyond space and time. So do not be surprised that you will find moments in this human experience that you will experience something beyond how space and time has been suggested to you. And what Mr.Within is saying is take existential responsibility for your exploration and for your journey in this life. Think of how Columbus might have felt, not his wrong actions, but his right actions in regards to discovering a new territory. He was like, wow, there's literally a new place here where we can build a world in. So you kind of begin to see that outside of the story, existential exploration is suggesting how much peace is. And existential peace, guys, very ironically, is not static and image-based. For the human being, its higher states of being and consciousness must be experienced. In other words, before you can even explore multidimensionality, you must first find the pilot's cap. You must find that moment where you are recognizing as a being, you want to navigate this consciousness and be aware of it. You are not just taking responsibility for your body and your physical health, you're taking responsibility for the health of your awareness, for the health of your realization, for the health of your understanding, for the health of how much you're standing in an idea for too long. What that means, if you're standing in a bus stop for too long, don't stand there if the bus is not coming. Do you know? I mean, you can't stand there for eons and for lifetimes, but immediately make yourself directly aware of what is here. And it is an awareness that knows what it must be done beyond a questioning. When you realize there's an aspect within the human experience that is beyond questioning, you are paying your spotlight of attention to a moment of conception that is aware of how conception is being made and is so beyond conception. So you are creating a new moment that not that you will just find there being a lot of guides and your intuition amplifying, but your reality is constantly changing as well. It's like that moment where you're like, gosh, I thought only my body was changing. The world is changing as well. world. Just like how that leaf is coming into manifestation, this world is going into new manifestation. And so you begin to see that you must not orient your consciousness with more senses of self, but with senses of worlds. So you are the world, my friend, in which a being is present in, not a being in which you are present in a world you don't know. And once you experience this for yourself, then the point of consciousness is navigating the plane of existence as the plane of existence. And so existential peace, my friends, becomes that moment where there is no interpretation that needs to create a lack of peace. It means that moment where you're comfortable with your stillness, with your silence, and with your solitude, and you are seeing that is a gift. Because if you've been hearing and following everything people have been saying to you from the beginning of your birth, in other words, if your truth is situated in only in noise and movement, you are limiting half your truth, which is in the stillness and the silence. And guys, the stillness and the silence is the gates you need to go through before you go through the gates of the transition that is death. What that means is you must acknowledge your idea and, in a sense, see how your idea was never alive. Just like how your idea never had to be there, your manifestation never had to be there. And so as life is learning in a fractal manner from itself, it is its greatest advancement. So what that means is the seer did not see the future. The seer was in a state of consciousness where he was that moment before manifestation could have meaning for man. And so that observance was expressive. It was the emanation of the spark. And so many people are trying to figure out the Big Bang, but who said it stopped? Who said that the consciousness of the individual is not instantaneously, simultaneously just exploding every moment? What that means is when there's too many changes happening in your environment, forget experimentation, my friend. What are you basing your science on? On how you are aware of reality in a certain manner and you experiment it? You can see, when you begin to look at life, it is not all about a self-inquiry that is satisfied through scientific theory. It is about a self-inquiry that is taking you to new visions of life, new views of life. The seer was not caught into the webs of individuality which are weaved by the omniscient, because that is how you're kept here. What that means is once you see that you have been not being sincere with life, you realize you could always have been, and where was that experience, where was that memory? And once you look at the abyss of thought, it is your moment of presence. What that means is many people thought that being had Alzheimer's, or that being could not think clear, but that being was always receiving a new moment. And so if you did not give him the burden of having to remember, that being would always be normally with you in a new experience. And so we must have the compassion of not just learning from the suffering that is physically seen in our fellow man, but the suffering that is within them. You are not seeing the fights that people are going through. You're not seeing the hardship. Because the minute you do, you cannot have the arrogance of belief, and you must become the most compassionate and efficient action for mankind. Because that is where man learns from his kindness to become transcendental. You thought that you getting yourself into a very big house and staying in there and living in a very comfortable modality and range of thought and self-awareness was life. No, the minute you can give that away to a being who's never had that experience and make your house a wonderland for all those children in the ghetto, you will begin to realize that you are a prophet of allowing experience to amplify. The prophets of self-awareness never have a face. And so they are the voice of existence, reminding existence of what it always knew. You are your greatest guidance, for in collective consciousness, peace had always bloomed. The pilot's calling. These mantras are here to recalibrate the consciousness of man into recognizing that as he makes and listens to these sounds, he is navigating his consciousness so that you begin to see that a technology to work with thought and your mind is actually resonance and to create sound. And so these sounds are positions of selfless observance. And so you begin to see that there are many ways you can enter an observance of sound, but eventually it is a dissolution of meaning because you're still hearing. It's as if the word is not finished. It's as if before that person said the last word, so you understood their sentence, it's as if the last word is being stretched, if the last words were om. And once you begin to see how they're stretched, it's as if in that moment of awareness to sound, just like how you're aware to my voice, you are seeing it's like you are touching it in realization. So what that means is if you just touch a tree right now, you are receiving how it feels based on the surface of your finger. So similarly, based on the surface of how you are seeing yourself in a world and awareness in the sphere of conception that man keeps with himself, which is his identity, externally observable, you see that once that identity stops doing what it's doing and stops interpreting its environment as something that can judge or can be judged, it is present in just existential simplicity where there is no thought even appearing in your mind. You're just in a silent moment of being. And this is a very clear platform for you to navigate and bring ideas and receive ideas and to work with. Do Do you see? It is your existential clarity, guys. It is no longer about one man making a technology and giving it to others. It is about all men individually, each going and discovering the very unique treasure of a technology that is within their being, which is their unique expression in this world. And it's unique because they are observing it in a certain manner. What that means is the observer still has an experience of individuation because it is looking at objectivity. So don't think that suddenly you will be nothing. This reality is here, and the only way you can be aware that is here is that the memory is kept. So what that means is this apprentice, this being that we are, is like it has a memory. So you see, parallel realities is actually sometimes beyond your memory. So unless you have had certain existential moments of your recognition of diving deeper into what memory is for you, you cannot access it because you are not allowing the idea to understand it. Because your idea needs to understand it in a certain way, which is kind of a childlike arrogance, which is saying, no, I want it now, like this, which mankind must stop his ways in that manner and simply see that he must let his beard grow for him to see that wisdom takes time and space to be observed for a little bit. You need to observe space and time and the nature of this reality for yourself, and then you will give yourself the awareness to what space even means and what time means, and there is infinite existential freedom because there is an infinite observance of how existence can be free as an idea. Infinity and freedom, of course, are what is relevant to an individual consciousness. A collective consciousness has no words, and it is absolute compassionate and blissful trust in life, but a trust that is clear. So you are no longer just trying to be good and trying to be bad. You are simultaneously aware of both realities, and instead of you thinking what you have to do, every moment that you're present, you receive the information from the moment as the moment. So it's, in other words, I don't think of the speech beforehand. I just sit down, and as I sit down, as I'm comfortably just alive, I look around and I begin to see. It's as if not just what's in front of me, the world that I'm seeing, wants to communicate with me. All my interpretations of this world are also present here. I mean, there's a phenomena that's memory, which is you sitting down and just being a being that has views. You're like, gosh, I'm viewing things. And this viewing thing, when you become observant of it, it has a transcendental quality that says you can never be only one side of the spectrum. There is night and day. You must acknowledge the fullness of this world in the sense that good and bad are not things that we should either live in a dystopia or a utopia, but we must live in the observance that we have the potential to be anything, but we must see what is best for man and then work in a manner that serves all existence. Because beings who embrace compassion, which is a very, very powerful consciousness technology, because it changes your consciousness as you just become compassionate. Because at first, when you tell someone to be kind and compassionate, and let's say the guy's been the most craziest, most, let's say, gangster person, most thug person. And of course, this is just an example, which it's just, a thought experiment for now. But it pretty much, get rid of the thought experiment in this whole section. When you begin to see a rough individual being invited to be kind, that individual actually cannot be kind to anyone else at first other than himself, because he is not really seeing himself. What that means is you won't be kind, you are not sincerely and authentically giving, for example, change to a homeless person if you really are not acknowledging the existence in that being's eyes. So we need to find a sincerity in how we can find clarity in our actions by us ourselves in a very self-aware manner, observing it and making it efficient. You see, efficiency must come from within. Advancement must come from within. Ambition must come from within. And when you see where it's coming from within, it's just your moment of now. It's your moment of being. And so this existential sensitivity is beyond the walls of ideology, simply put. It's a directly experiential thing. And align it with experience, guys. You'll have a lot of joy, because in your joy, in your daily actions, your understanding of your moment of intelligence is always increasing. So there is no longer failure or success or happiness or its lack. You're no longer helping yourself because you don't want to help an individual sense of self that's changing. What that means is when you were 5, you had a sense of self that you were behaving in a certain manner. Now things have changed and you're different, right? So what I mean is that you want to give yourself an answer that is for, in a sense, I'm going to say in quotations, the soul. You want to find a solution and a view in life that is encompassing all views. And many people are using symbology and external certainty. Internal certainty means your intuition has already given you what you need to know and to do. You still have a choice in your projection though. Do you know? What that means is that moment when I'm walking in the park and let's say it's getting sunset, but I still have my shades on. Some part of me knows, yeah, it's going to get dark and I'm not going to be able to see things. But I would still go in to see how that transition of lighting changes, you know? And so you see, on some level, you are aware of the illusion because you are working with it. So it is not an illusion because an illusion does not give the efficiency of the being to navigate the plane of existence. There is no such thing as an illusion. Everything's being directly experienced. Simply bring yourself to your moment of awareness. Clarity is now. As you're aware of now, begin to see your consciousness can include many ideas, many forms, many spectrums, many dualities. Your experiences are suggesting this. Your memory and your past are influencing you in a manner where you are conceiving it constantly in the present moment. And so how you move beyond ears that are just hearing things is to see where the one voice in existence originated from. And you will begin to see when Mr. Within says there will be renaissances, and he says that with a very graceful smile, is because guys, these new renaissances are a very different renaissance. They are the renaissance that is not happening when individuals bring new ideas together. It's a renaissance that happens when a part of you is meeting another aspect of your existential intelligence. It's like that moment where you're waking up in simultaneous realities and you're seeing that it was all here too. Do you see? So it's that moment where your clarity is being oriented by your presence, which is always a very unknown and knowable, beautiful phenomena that is happening to you. You think your ideas were just ideas. Your ideas are manifestation of the cosmos, my friend. I will always listen to every sound that can be present in this world. For it is not a compassion that existential peace is selfless in the sense that your compassion is coming from how much you're allowing life to be as life. What that means is some people will not listen to you because they are ignorant, because they will not try to look in a new way because they have been looking in a certain habit of a way. Habits are not just physical. You have habits of perception. You have habits of judgment. But it does not mean that's your intelligence and you have to be limited to that modality. It just simply means that you must become aware that there is more to you than meets the eye. And that's simply a wisdom that's been passed on generations and generations. They're like, okay, there's more here. Don't be so convinced and live a good life. And a good life doesn't mean that good needs to have a shape, but good needs to be the profoundest moment where your experience of your moment is reaching its peak. And when it reaches its peak, many projections break. There is a way that man can look at this world where the world was never here. And then he will be his world. And so teachings on existential peace become the beauty of your moment of being. When you are no longer seeking knowledge based on, with a limited apparatus in a certain considered sense of space and time. Because before man can even ask a question, who am I? He must question, what does time and space mean for me? What do my senses mean for me? What does my experience mean to me? Right? And sometimes I find when you give answers too quickly, you're limiting the search. And so what was profound, I think, about Isaac Newton, the father of science in a sense, was that he science was his extraction from a novel moment. But the way our educational systems are training our students is by not making them students of life, but making them students of ideologies. And so some person suddenly goes and specializes in an aspect of knowledge that is not giving them more ability. Do you know? You must be authentic and sincere with yourself and with your experience, for you must give yourself certain allowances which are opportunities of your next step. You might ask for a better life, but if you are not trusting life, then you will never get it. What that means is once you trust life, and in a sense you find that beautiful moment in the lives of many people who have seen the beauty and the imagery of God in regards to the concept of creator and creation, see that it's that moment where creation surrenders all suffering, illusion, and I don't knows to his moment of being, which is God. And so the act of surrender in mysticism and in many religious texts was being done at a higher state of consciousness. My friends, do not judge these books. The Upanishads were written as a state of consciousness beyond imagery, beyond what language can tell us. There is no visualization that can entrap the direct experiencer. So, before you judge your world, first observe what is your world. And don't think that you don't know. Just understand that you're a being who's able, and I don't want to say I'm very tired and I've had enough, but I want to say that when I look at the human being, when I just look at it as a being and look at the human being, the human form, the human idea, the human life form, the human construct and its deconstructions, I see its greatest steps are in its awareness of change rather than its static opinions of how change must occur. What that means is when you begin to see, let's say if me and you want to build the greatest city known to man, let's say suddenly we are just engineers and architects and we just get together all as the greatest minds of humanity and just try to create the greatest city, we'll begin to see that if we are still stuck in the boardroom meeting and we're supposed to have the city made in, let's say, I don't know, like 7 years or 10 years, we begin to see like if we are spending a lot of time in the boardroom meeting and we're not accepting a certain amount of our design, in other words, we need to quickly agree to a design, accept, and go into a new state of consciousness and begin creating. So what that means is don't just write down, make a to-do list. You need to actually go do the things on that list. And once you do, it might not be comfortable at first. It might be a bit of a challenge, but trust me, it will be more rewarding for you, because as life, you will be more with life. You will be more open. Sometimes your depression is because you're not taking the opportunities that are in front of you. Sometimes peace is right here and we forget to see it. And you will begin to see humor is a sign of a being who is becoming self-aware that he is beyond ideology. So ideology is becoming playful. If someone comes and tells him it's the end of the world, he's like, what do you mean? I just got here. That's what you would say, because that's what the mystic always says, you know. My experience here is not that I've lived here for so long. My experience is that I am present in this moment, and so the beauty is here. You know, just like how you respect your friends when you're with them to listen to what they have to say, just like how you respect your teachers and your parents, and just how human life, when it has an intention to help, you can receive, you kind of begin to see that there never was a reason to have just one way of seeing things. You can always see things in more ways. So man must acknowledge the simultaneous sense of confronting reality in the sense that one character belongs to many stories and many stories belong to one storyteller. So what that means is that when I say one, you might be drawing the number one on a blackboard, but no, this oneness is not with our trying to find it. Do you see? It's a oneness where as we become observant of our nature of being, the world finds us. A more beautiful world finds you. In other words, your self-awareness gets a new vision of ability. So in other words, it's like all those times where you thought you were shy, you begin to see there was no need. I should have just said something, you know? And once you say things, people are not what you think, guys, because your thoughts are constantly changing. What that means is one day I've wanted to I've gotten so angry at a friend where I've wanted to, metaphorically punch them, And there have been days where I have just been in the presence of that being, like that being has been the teacher of my teachers, do you know? In other words, he's been the expression of the teaching of my moment. And so when we begin to value life because we're valuing that which is here, we have only one responsibility as human beings, to give the human more awareness of its being and more allowance. And that awareness means that as these internal renaissances of seeing new realities happen, you will begin doing acts of immense trust. You will find yourself suddenly being that person where when your teacher has made a mistake on that blackboard, when no one is saying that mistake, you will immediately see, why is no one saying? And you will say it, and you will be like, the teacher didn't even know it. Do you know? So it's very important to see that we constantly, as an existential moment of awareness, need to work with our world and see the communication that is our world to make it efficient. What that means is, when I sat in a room let me take it back to that example. In other words, when we were in that boardroom meeting designing the greatest city, we knew that we had to leave that space. Sometimes you get understandings of what you need to do in one state of consciousness, but the action means you have to get rid of that story and go and experience a new story. So what that means is, as man throws away the illusion that he realized he is no longer an object subjected to, he has a freedom to move beyond the veils of his interpretation. And so, what Mr. Within would like to say, and to, in a sense, land with, existential peace is something that is within you, for it is something that is within the world. So just like how when you go to the park, all your organs and your cells and everything in your body has no choice but to come with you, So similarly, just like how man is present in this world, how man is in this vein of manifestation, in this plane of existence, he is also within a greater intelligent movement where he must explore through his devotion and for his love for manifestation. Because at times, critical thinking judges without getting judged, and that is dangerous because that is hurting a being. What that means is there is no reason to think that there is one truth when all men were found within a true moment of existence. You are a multidimensional being, and you don't explore this as if it's something where, you're rewarded with. It is something where, in your awareness to what is the phenomena of manifestation in your moment, your knowing will be there. Innately, it is there. Once you sincerely look at this life, knowledge will be present because you are no longer a personality in your presence. So sometimes when I am asked questions, there is no idea of a human being even. Sometimes my answer is just coming from just a clear abstraction. How do I say it? It's very, very, very profound. So acknowledge reality playfully, gracefully. Realize that you need to contribute to human communication, and the best way you can do it is to be honest and sincere. Existential peace comes when you begin being peaceful with your sense of self and also with your observance of that sense of self, because that is how it is peaceful, because you're observing it and you are an intelligence beyond space and time. And if there is a consideration, even 1%, maybe 0.01% that man can be beyond space and time, that means, guys, get out the pens, get out the notebooks, get out the canvases, get ready for us to come out with new artwork and knowledge and technologies of what is man in this modern world. And so we will hopefully perhaps develop the association of the modern mystic and begin to see that in our question, our greatest answers were allowed to be present. And so as you are here, You are that moment where you can be the continuation in the silence and stillness, or the origination of a temporal experience within sound. In other words, what you can say or think in regards to a association to a form. May these words serve those who know that they have known. May these words serve that part of you that knows exactly what needs to be done and has now found that there's no reason not to do it. Because we want to live in a world where not just one human being is able, humanity is able as a species and as a developing consciousness to its greater sense of being here, which is always conscious. So what that means is we thought we weren't conscious in our unconscious. We actually are. So what that means is there's a sense of consciousness to form where I'm a physical body here. And then there's the unconscious, so what I don't know that's beyond here. But then simultaneously, as you observe what is here, you reach a point within you where you become aware that you are also simultaneously the consideration of the consideration. That as I am here, there is a greater conscious reality that is the energy of my experience. And what I would like to say is that I had a dream once where in the dream, it was very weird because it was a very cartoon-like dream, It was like not cartoon, but very like clay animation-like dream. It was weird, where I was like this clay person, and I was this one person who was running. It's as if I was in the eyes of this clay version of me and there were two other, I was running, and I was running, and suddenly I don't know how to say it. It's like that experience of me running in one reality turned into three beings running. It was crazy. It was like that simultaneous moment where I saw like three beings. It was as if like in a very clay cartoon-like manner, I experienced a moment of presence where there was the projection of a reality where I was just an individual being running, and also I was also the part of the plane of the reality of three beings running at the same time. Three different beings running. It's as if like, and I was only one. I don't know how to explain it, but it's as if let us use the imagery of the coin. The coin has two sides of it, but the two sides of it are in one. So now let us take the edge of the plane of existence in man's awareness as the edge of, as if like when we look at the sky and when we look at the stars, we're just looking at one coin, one part of the coin. Now, the other part of the coin, how we see we can be aware of it is we have to go into a view that is aware of it, right? And so, because man is seeing, he has to go there. He sees sometimes when you reach the peak of the mountain, it is not a physical destination. You're not here to do just some physical things. Your purpose is not just a physical expression. Your purpose is an existential expression, and you are choosing how comfortable you are with it. So always be comfortable with your existence. And so it's like that moment when you look at the stars, you kind of see that there could be a complete reality present right when this reality is present. And so it's very funny because when you think about it, if we were looking at one side of the coin, we are still looking at the coin. Do you see? It's as if we are still given access to absolute reality. It's just that we're only seeing one side of the coin. But when we begin to look at it, we know we are both sides, even though we're just seeing one side. So what Mr. Within found in that moment, in that dream, and dreams are of course gifts for you to open and to explore your existential clarity. And so in a sense, that dream kind of suggested that right now that I am one person talking on some simultaneous reality, I am also a different experience, and it's not me. Do you know? It's just how the planes are connected. So what that means is man is reaching a point where in his consciousness he's realizing he has the ability to be the experience of the whole world. And as the mystic has always known this, and many yogis in ancient India and the meditators of the elegance that is found in Tibet, you need to see life, in being life, is everything for no thing, for nothing. So your absolute is not a cure for your individuality. Your absolute is an existential understanding as your whole moment, which is your whole world, your whole moment of being. And it's like that moment where you begin to see that there are many ways that man can search and begin to look at things deeply. But if we are seeing that there's a hurricane coming in, let's say a hurricane hits a shore, you know, which place is better to let's say meditate or study the nature of life? Is it better on the shore, to be on the shore where there's so many distractions and thoughts and illusion, or is it better to be in the middle of the ocean where the wave has not even developed to roar? So you can go into a state of your consciousness where there is not hurricanes of thought and imagery projection to bother you. You can become aware of the intensity of your experience, and you do this with the knowing of your being. Not with the knowing of you as a thinker or as an idea or someone who's trying to understand something you can't. The clarity is existentially present. And so it's that moment where you see the only personalities were ones of laughter. For all you can do is laugh when your world is about to change. And you know it's changing. And you know you're moving beyond it. So be aware, and existential peace is found within your breath. Because there was a moment where a certain intuitive teaching came to me, and this teacher said, breathe prayer. Do not say it as an idea doing something for another idea. Breathe prayer. Have your intentions be clear and live in the world you know you are in. And then existential peace is no longer something that a teacher is telling a student or a student is receiving from a teacher. It is that moment where the being who's receiving the communication of his moment is understanding that the teaching is the greatest teacher. How the nature of reality is experienced is much more profound in value than a textbook. You know, a book filled with text, because it is a greater existential mirror. You know, that person skydiving may perhaps be in a moment where he's understanding a greater realization of the nature of experience than that person who's probably sitting on his couch and changing the channels of a machine that was made out of ignorance. And let us for a moment just be within the peace of our world.